Well, we are winning the information war. About an hour ago, Obama had a press conference and said that although he maintained that he still had the power to launch a strike at any time against Syria, he was going to wait for congressional approval. Now, all last night, CNN was running reports and had a banner that said that Obama was war-weary. At the same time, Obama was pushing relentlessly for war. No, it's the American people that are weary of war. And it's the American people who are insisting that Obama follow the Constitution. Even though he maintains that he doesn't have to follow the Constitution, we have pressured him into following the Constitution. And it hasn't been CNN. It hasn't been the mainstream media. They have been pushing relentlessly propaganda for the military-industrial complex. It has been the alternative news media that has been pushing back against this. It's the alternative media that is questioning the veracity of their ever-changing story. Now, you've got Peter King and other warmongers in the Republican Party that Obama is counting on to try to push this through Congress. And Peter King, surprisingly, well, I guess it's not surprising for Peter King, but he said that he thinks that Obama is weakening the presidency. Well, let's hope so, because the presidency has usurped powers that don't belong to it under the Constitution. It's time that we take some of the powers that have been seized by past presidents and take them away and put them under a more constitutional authority.
Because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and then we'll come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American? So would you like to clarify that?
But I've also served with Republican presidents and Democratic presidents who has always reserved the right to defend this country if necessary.
It's interesting to note that Kerry's most recent press conference, he lied about the history of chemical warfare.
This is about the large-scale, indiscriminate use of weapons that the civilized world long ago decided must never be used at all.
He said that chemical warfare had been banned since World War I. Well, certainly it was during World War I that it rose to new heights, but it was not banned. As a matter of fact, the gas in question, sarin gas, was not even created until World War II. And even though it wasn't used by either side during World War II, the Americans got sarin gas from the Nazis, and they stockpiled it, weaponized it, and kept it in their arsenal until the early 90s. They did not get rid of sarin gas and other chemical weapons for humanitarian reasons. No, at the same time, they were okaying the use of depleted uranium, knowing the effect that it would have on our own troops, as well as the permanent effect that it would have on the areas where it was used, killing thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions over the centuries with increased cancer, with birth defects. They knew this. They approved it at the same time they banned chemical weapons. So this was not about humanitarianism. This was about getting a hegemony on weapons of mass destruction. You see, since that time, the United States has maintained that whenever chemical weapons or biological weapons are used, they will retaliate with nuclear weapons. That's right. So the whole point of this ban is to make people who use biological or chemical weapons look bad enough so that the United States can use nuclear weapons against them. And of course, any country that tries to get nuclear weapons is banned against that. We will have to go to war against somebody who tries to get nuclear weapons. So this is all about the United States or one government, which may eventually be the United Nations or some government run out of Brussels. But they want to make sure that only one government that they control has a monopoly on weapons of mass destruction. Kerry also lied about the casualty figures. And it's amazing that at the same time they are touting the misery and the suffering and the deaths and the overflowing hospitals from this gas attack, that they're proposing to do exactly the same thing, raining death down from the sky. But of course, as they put it, this is going to be a surgical strike. And all last night, CNN had people on talking about how accurate our bombs and missiles are. Really? Look at how many innocent people have been killed by Obama's continuing drone strikes. Thousands have been killed by that. So don't expect that these cruise missile attacks or whatever they do that we cannot afford, don't expect that that's going to be surgical. There are going to be far more deaths than happened with the sarin gas attacks. The attack occurred 10 days ago. and UN inspectors have just now left. However, according to the UN, there are still 1,000 workers that are still in the area and would be exposed to any kind of attack that would be coming from the United States. That may be also another reason why Obama is delaying this. But it's important to remember that when the UN inspectors were last in Syria, only 3 months ago, they determined that the gas attack in question at that time was a sarin gas attack and was carried out by the rebels, not by the government. And it's going to take another week for the UN inspectors to analyze the data and publish their report. Now, we've also had other reports that have been surfacing. First, we had earlier this week, we had Israeli intelligence said that they had intercepted communications within Syria that indicated that a lower-level officer did this without the authorization and to the surprise of the Syrian authorities, and then said, but ultimately, the Syrian authorities are responsible for anything done underneath them. Does that sound like what the U.S. government does here at home? Do they take responsibility for what subordinates do? Not in the IRS scandal, we haven't seen that, or any of the other scandals that have been happening. Now, we've just had a report today that comes from Foreign Policy, the magazine Foreign Policy, and it says that American intelligence agencies had indications 3 days beforehand that the Syrian regime was poised to launch a lethal chemical attack. And the people who are there are asking, if that is true, then why did the U.S. not do anything? So rather than what the U.S. intelligence agency is trying to do is to cast blame on the Syrian government, and yet at that time what it does is that makes it look even more like a false flag attack. It looks like the American intelligence community is admitting to a false flag attack, because a false flag attack is not just an attack that you plan, coordinate, and carry out. It is also an attack that you know about beforehand that somebody else is going to do, but because it's to your political advantage, you allow it to happen. And so if the American intelligence report briefing is correct that was just given, then they are admitting that they did conduct a false flag attack, which is what Ron Paul said earlier this week.
I think it's a false flag. I think really, indeed. And nobody knows if indeed he was slaughtering people by the thousands. There are a lot of factions out there. Why don't we ask, about the Al-Qaeda? Why are we on the side of the Al-Qaeda right now?
And what Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, has also said. He calls this report of John Kerry to be utter nonsense, and he made this statement. That is why I'm convinced that the chemical attack is nothing more than a provocation by those who want to drag other countries into the Syrian conflict. That's exactly the definition of a false flag attack. And we also need to look at why we are supporting Al-Qaeda. Ron Paul has raised that question. Former Congressman Dennis Kucinich has also raised that question, saying that we are acting as Al-Qaeda's Air Force. Well, we're going to keep pushing on this. There's another 10 days. When Congress comes back, this is going to be debated, and we are going to continue to push them on the truth. We're going to continue to inform the American people, and the American people need to keep them responsible for following the Constitution, for not starting wars, not invading other countries. The American people want peace by an overwhelming amount. In the UK and in France, about 2/3 of the people do not want their governments to go to war. The French government is going anyway, but the UK government, in a historic vote, decided not to follow the Prime Minister's recommendations and are not going. And so the question is, in America, where it's not 2/3, but it's 9 out of 10 people do not want the American government involved, will they follow the will of the people? Will they deceive the people? We'll wait and see. For InfoWars Nightly News, I'm David Knight. Now you can watch the InfoWars Nightly News streaming live as it happens for free.
Check it out at Infowars.com/show.